Alright, what is up YouTube? Welcome back to another Battlefield video. Today, as you can see by the title, we're going to be talking about Battlefield 6, and why 80% of the players have left, and how to fix it. So Battlefield 6 has a solid foundation, but after nearly losing 80% of its players since launch, it's clear that looking good isn't enough. We don't need more $20 skins, we need depth. Today I'm breaking down why the skill gap has vanished, from a lack of persistent lobbies to shallow vehicle combat, and how introducing new realistic mechanics like armor angling and maybe introducing belt system into certain aspects of armor gameplay can help make the game better, which seems to be a huge talking point amongst the community. I have my thoughts and opinions about armor. I know DICE is going to make a pass of them in Season 2. So I'm going to be talking about things that I would want to see, and I'm going to be talking about things that I think I would add to help make tank-on-tank combat better, but things to also improve air-to-air combat, air-to-ground, and balance all those out, you know. So just to give you a heads up, the armor part of this video is going to be quite lengthy. It's going to be in depth, so keep in mind because it's going to be a long video. Alright, so to start things off, we need to talk about this right away because it is one of the most important problems that I see within Battlefield 6. And understand that I do not hate the game. I am a huge Battlefield veteran. I have history with the game. I've been playing since Battlefield 3. I think when Back at Karkin came out. Even before that, I think it was a pre-order bonus, something like that, right? So I have huge experience in Battlefield. I've played every Battlefield since, including 2042. I even covered that game. And yeah, I kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about. But yeah, I'm not hating on the game. It's coming from a place of love. I want to see the game do better. And I want to see players enjoy the game. And I want this to be really good, right? So yeah, first things first. Like I said, much to the biggest part of the problem so far has to be the matchmaking. Now, for those of you who don't know, the game does have a skill-based matchmaking in the game, which isn't like Call of Duty. I think in order it prioritizes ping, region, then skill, and some other things too that I don't know, but that's going based off what I feel in the game. And due to the poor match quality that I'm sure a lot of you have been experiencing, much like myself, I think two things play a huge part into it, and two things need to be addressed to improve the overall match quality of the game. So one of the things that's been a detriment to it is disbanding of lobbies. Call of Duty's done this, Battlefield is doing this, further skill-based matchmaking and stuff. And I think overall it is a huge detriment to the game. I don't think it is good. You don't give a chance to form a community around the game and around certain game modes and stuff. There aren't sort of rivalries that can be built there. You can't make friends. And there's no back and forth, right? So that is a huge issue as to why the match quality is really bad. And when I talk about match quality, I'm talking about also matches being really heavily lopsided. You're either getting rolled or you're the one rolling, and neither of those feel good. Like, it feels good to roll an enemy team, but when they're trying. If you're just rolling and you're spawn camping them, or you have them all at like one objective, it's not a good experience for the enemy team because people end up leaving. You never have a full team. And the people that keep getting backfilled into the game are leaving right away because you're in a losing match. You're spawn camped or you held at a point. Not a good feeling at all, right? Also, I lost my train of thought. Also, if you're winning and you're just like a huge margin, you're gonna feel like you're not doing anything, or you're just gonna feel like you're gonna get bored after a while, you know. because you do want some fight back, and it sucks because like the matches where they're super close isn't really that good, or they don't happen too often, and when they do, like, it's pretty good, but most of the time, maybe like 8 times out of 10, your matches are going to be super lopsided one way or another, and it's not a good feeling, which is why with persistent lobbies there needs to be a team balancer. So the way I envision this working in my head is obviously you're going to keep lobbies together, and the matchmaker, because I don't think the matchmaker is an issue. I think the issue is just disbanding lobbies and the lack of a team balancer. The matchmaker will bring players in that are matchmaking, bring them in according to the skill to fill whatever skill range, skill gap that's missing, and go from there, right? And you won't have to fully get rid of everyone. Let's say after a match it was heavily lopsided, the team balancer kicks in while it's going into the next map, which we're going to touch up here in a bit. So it'll shuffle squads around. So let's say the top 2 squads on the winning team are now separate, and it goes according to that. Try and keep the games as balanced as possible, and I think that would really help out. I said I was going to talk about the maps. Here we're going to talk about that right now. Right now I don't think there's a set map rotation, which leads to a lot of players playing a certain map a lot. In my instance, every other map that I play is either Operation Firestorm, which I'm getting tired of, New Salt Lake City, which I used to hate, I kind of do like now, and Eastwood. It's always like I'll play Merrick Valley for one match, and then I'll get Operation Firestorm. Then I'll play Liberation Peak, and I'll get Operation Firestorm. Then I'll get Operation Firestorm. Then I'll get Eastwood. You get what I'm talking about? Like, I'm not the only person who experiences this, and I think that also ruins the experience, because you want to experience different biomes, you want to experience different maps, different things, right? And when you're always playing the same maps over and over again, it's just not a good feeling, right? And I think putting the maps in the set rotation, having them tell a story, would be very good. And I think also the new maps that you add can fill in that timeline, how you want things to go, to better elaborate on the story. You can add deeper Easter eggs, you can add stuff to tell a story, have the multiplayer tell a story with the battle pass as well, and overall just make better maps. I'm not saying these maps are bad either, right? But these maps, they feel too small. Some are big, but because it's like an urban environment, it feels too cluttered, and a lot of the Battlefield community wants more bigger, not necessarily open, but balanced maps, and yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say with team balancer and all that stuff. That is one step that I think needs addressing in the game. The matchmaker, persistent lobbies, maps, bigger maps. I am going to talk about the live service, but that's going to be later on after I touch up on the vehicle stuff. We are going to come up on the vehicle stuff right now, so get comfortable, because we're going to go in depth on how I'm going to balance armor, starting off with the MBTs, then I'm going to go into the IFVs, and then we're going to go into helicopters in the air, which I'll intertwine both of them because they're the same. And yeah, so giving you a heads up. Okay, so starting off with MBTs. Right now, with the current game and how many engineers there are and stuff that we're just dealing with as tankers, keep in mind I am a tanker. I am also a pilot too. It feels like you are eating rockets everywhere and you're just easy to take out. Whether you're eating ATGMs from the air, whether you're getting bombed, whether you are eating rockets, laws, you name it, you're getting so much damage from everywhere. And it feels like just tanks aren't as reliable unless you have like 5 or 6 engineers repairing you in the back, which what I've been playing with these past couple days. There are not a lot of people doing their roles. They're not playing their roles, so you're just eating rockets like a motherfucker, and it's not good. So I'm gonna suggest some changes that I would make to vehicles, hoping these can get added into the game. I'm gonna start off with an MBT, talk about tank on tank combat, and talk about what I would do for the tank versus infantry combat, right? So first things first, if you've driven an MBT, you fired any sort of round, you know that the shell velocity is slow and the drop is insane. Overall, I would suggest increasing shell velocities, but make it dependent on shell type. Mainly because people need to be more smarter with what they bring into the battlefield, right? If you want to go with a sort of like anti-infantry type thing, you can load up high explosive as your primary. And I'm gonna get super in depth with all this, so just get ready, right? So high explosive would be good for infantry. It would have good blast radius. It would have the biggest blast radius of the 3 shell types that I would introduce. They're in the game already, but like I want to introduce them my way. So it would be slow, heavy. You don't have to change much in terms of the shell velocity and stuff, because that is how a high explosive round works, at least in my head. Slow, heavy, decent amount of blast radius, and really good for dealing with infantry, jeeps, quads, and it should deal decent damage to the armored transport that's in the game, that I do think needs to be nerfed, by the way, but we'll talk on that later. And then we do have a multi-purpose shell. That one I would make it to where it's middle of the ground. It's your standard. It's what you're going to start with. It won't do a lot of damage in terms of penetration, like it'll be average, and it'll have like the medium blast yield to ground units, so you have to be more accurate with your shell to get a kill. These you can label them as APHE, you can label them as heat FS, whatever makes sense, but that's what I would add to. So we already got high explosive rounds, we got a multi-purpose, which could be APHE or heat FS, and then for the anti-armor round, I would make it the APFSDS round, and I would make this the fastest shell velocity. I would make this shell good, and it would have the fastest shell velocity in the game, right? This won't have any sort of blast yield, it won't have any sort of blast radius, mainly because it's really good for armor. And for those of you who don't know, the armor in the game, the damage model, frontal armor, if you hit it with an RPG or a tank, you're not going to do as much damage from the front. You have to hit it perpendicular from the side. I would make it to where angles play a thing, so we are going to talk about angling here in a bit. And the back is a 2-shot kill, so let's keep that in mind. So when shooting, let's say like the APFSDS rounds, because it's really fast, you can deal more damage in the front, and you'll deal more damage from the sides, and it'll still be a 2-shot kill from the back, right? How would this compare with the multi-purpose round, or the multi-purpose shell, which once again you can label it APHE or heat FS? Essentially, you can deal decent damage from the sides, still 2-shot on the back, and I guess the standard damage for whatever it is now for the front for a tank, depending on like if it's an IFV, an MBT, or transport, you know, because different armor absorbs different amount of damage, right? So we're just using MBT versus MBT, right? And then the heat rounds would do minimal damage against armor, but really solid damage against infantry. With it having like a good blast radius, good damage, and the multi-purpose shell being like not as a big radius as a high explosive, but it would have some sort of like filler. You have to be more accurate with that round to be able to get kills, you know. And that's how I would balance that. I wouldn't really touch aim guided, and I think they have lock on guided. I wouldn't touch those because they're ATGMs, so it is what it is. Now we're going to talk about adding an extra layer of defense for tank drivers. So in this sense, I would add angling into the game. For those of you who've played War Thunder with the tanks, you know, angling your tank boosts your survivability, because if you move the hull of your tank, you increase the armor thickness depending on the amount of degrees you rotate your body. I would add something like that, not as extreme as like War Thunder, but something that'll make sense, so a skilled tank driver can push up and be able to absorb more damage from rockets, because right now the amount of rockets and stuff the tanks take, you basically blow up immediately unless you have like 5 or 6 engineers repairing you in the back. Sorry, I hit the mic. And the way angling would work, it would just depend on where they hit you. I wouldn't go super in detail. I wouldn't add like, let's say like War Thunder, I wouldn't add like volumetric. I would still keep it relatively arcadey, but let's say like if you fire an RPG at a tank that's angled and the impact angle of the RPG is bad, it'll have a chance of ricocheting, or if someone hits you with a rounds like a tank round, it'll be able to bounce or have the opportunity to bounce. You have that added layer of defense. So tank on tank combat, that depends over who knows the angles where to hit, what type of shell they're using. And against infantry, it's an added layer of defense towards rockets like the RPG or stuff. It wouldn't necessarily affect like the aim guided rocket like the AT4, I think that's what it is. It wouldn't affect anything like the Law or the Javelin, but anything else that is dumbfire like that, like the RPG, you have that added layer of protection on top of what you already have, like, what is it, the reinforced armor for the MBTs and some other stuff, you know, just to give them that added layer of defense for when your APS goes down or when you run out of smokes and you're trying to just survive and provide space so your engineers can rep you and stuff. I think that is a very good thing to have. I would like to see this implemented into the game, and I think that would help out armor combat in general, you know. So I think that covers most of the stuff that I want to talk about with MBTs. Alright, so before we get into the IFVs, I did some research and I am currently editing the video. I'm trying to organize the clips. A lot of what I'm going to say is not going to be accurate to like the real life fire rates of the Bradleys and that other tank, but I'm trying to make a point in terms of like autocannons, so bear with me. I didn't I thought the fire rates for both guns on the Bradley and on the IFV for the packs were a lot faster. They're not. So just giving you a heads up. Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the video. Moving into the IFVs and the AA guns. This is just a mechanic I want to introduce. It's gonna sound broken, but trust me, in practice it's not gonna be so bad. It just depends on how DICE would balance it. So IFVs, talking about the Bradley, and I forgot what that other light tank is called, or the infantry fighting vehicle from PAX is called, but I'm gonna use a Bradley as an example, right? So that tank has a 25mm autocannon, and in battlefield I think it fires a bit too slow. And I would want to increase the fire rate of it, make it feel like an actual autocannon. Because if I'm not mistaken, in real life it fires like a lot faster. And I would introduce a belt mechanic. Now I say belt mechanic because the AA gun and the Bradleys or the IFVs have autocannons. You can do this for air if you want to go that far, but I don't think air needs it. How I would do this is, for those of you who play War Thunder, right? If you look at your belt that you're taking for the air, right? Let's say you have 4 shells that you see. You want to run an anti-armor belt for your Bradley. It would show you have 3 APFSDS shells, and the last one will be either a high explosive or a multi-purpose round, right? So you can't fully burst a tank, but you can definitely do damage, especially if you catch it off guard or you're hitting it from the side from afar, stuff like that. How would this work with an AA gun? You can have like different belt types, so you have different combinations, right? Let's say you have an anti-air belt, which you can add just like a faster flying high explosive, which is good for, let's say, like the stealth jets. Then you have your multi-purpose belt, which is good for, let's say, the attacker. Then you have your anti-armor belt, which is good for taking on the attacker and light armored vehicles, let's say like the IFVs and below, because you're not going to do much damage as an A gun to an MBT, right? Well, you can, but this is Battlefield. Trying to keep things as grounded and as arcadey as possible, right? Not super arcadey, but I want to introduce realistic aspects into the game that I think would benefit it, right? So I think having a mechanic like that would help out. Now, you would have to be very conscious of what types of munition you bring into the battlefield, because let's say like for the Bradley, right, going back to that, you have full armor piercing, so it's good for armor, not good for infantry. Then you have another belt that is multi-purpose, and that would be decent for infantry, decent for ground, but not ideal on either way. And then you have your high explosive belt, which is good for infantry, but not good for like heavy armor. Like you're not gonna deal much damage to another like IFV, and you're gonna do minimal damage to like an MBT using high explosive, right? So it's good for taking on transport vehicles, quads, jeeps, like open vehicles. And maybe if they want to go this route, you can add some sort of like AA belt to help deal with choppers. And how I would balance this out was I would take off the 12 round reload, or the 12 round limit, and I would actually increase it to 120, increase the fire rate of the autocannons to make it more like a machine gun. Not as fast firing, right, but still like punchy, you know. And I would make it to where you have 3, let's say one whole quote unquote clip is 120, right? 120 rounds. Your other clip could be 120, another clip would be 120, but you can choose to take in either, let's say, 2 heat belts and a multi-purpose belt, or 2 heat belts and an AP belt. The choice is yours on how you want to take it. You can choose how many of what kind of belts you want to take, so you have more variety, right? Obviously, if you switch from, let's say, your HE belt into your AP belt, you're going to have a reload time to wait, because you have to unload all that and reload the new belt. I think that would be a good balance. Plus, it would incentivize players to get out of spawn. And there would definitely be more of a skill in how a Bradley would take on an MBT using this maneuverability, right? You can go that route, or you can keep it as a troop transport. Either way, it's totally up to the players. Definitely adding more in terms of defenses as well would help, because I know an IFV angling doesn't make much sense, but you can kind of add it there. So like if an RPG has a bad impact angle, it'll bounce and stuff, but like it's not gonna get one shot by an Abrams, you know. Like in the real world, and I think in War Thunder, you can one shot these vehicles. We're not gonna go that far in dip. It's still Battlefield, you know. I want to keep it relatively arcadey, so it'll take more damage facing an MBT. It'll be balanced when they're facing each other, like the Bradley and the other one, and it'll have that added layer of defense through angling, obviously with distance and stuff. I think that would help both of those. The A guns, the way I would rebalance them out, I would definitely not make it burst. I would give them a bigger ammo count, and I would add an overheat mechanic, but the overheat mechanic wouldn't be really quick because you want to be able to get a good burst in. So let's say it overheats every, let's see, what is it, 500 rounds. Let's say it overheats every 100 rounds, right? So you have a good burst out. You can potentially fire indefinitely, but if you really hold on the trigger for 100 rounds, it's going to overheat, you know? That way it'll give the capability combined with like your anti-air missiles to really get in that kill on a jet or a helicopter, right? And as far as addressing that armored transport that I said needs to be nerfed, I think that vehicle is too strong. It feels like taking on a freaking Bradley, not gonna lie, with the machine gun it has a top and the other machine guns on the side, and it acting sort of like as a pseudo support vehicle. I feel like it's too strong. It's, with the amount of players who just ignore it, it's easy to back cap, and it is really annoying to take on. And I think an armored transport should be able to take like 3 or 4 rockets. I think maybe like 2, and like 1 shot in the back if you get a good shot, you know. I think that would be good. And then let's say like the open top Jeeps, quads should be, I think the open top Jeep can tank a rocket, but if a rocket gets inside the open area, let's say like it shoots the backseat, everyone should be gone. And it should, obviously an RPG should 1 shot a ATV, you know. So that's pretty much how I would balance the armor. Right now I do feel like armor feels very, it's strong, don't get me wrong, right? I love armor, but it feels like it could use some love, and the stuff that I'm proposing here is mainly just to add more skill behind being a tank driver. You don't have to just sit in the back, you know. And that pretty much sums up this part about armor. I'm about to move into the air, so this part is gonna go, it's gonna be just as lengthy as the armor, but this is its own kind of worm. So we're gonna start off with helicopters, right? So helicopter combat right now is not so good. That is another thing that is really annoying players. The flight ceiling for helicopters is super low, and I don't think that is the right thing, because when you're going head to head with another helicopter, right, all it is people climbing up, reaching the ceiling, and kind of just being stuck there. And they're open to being RPG, they're open to stingers, they're open to getting towed, they're open to a lot of things. I don't think that is good. I think the flight ceiling for the helicopter should be just as high as a jet. Is that a smart thing? No, but overall, I mean, they need to have the free space to move around and stuff. Another thing I would do to make helicopters feel better is they need to increase the velocity of the rockets, because right now when you fire rockets, whether it's the light rockets, the Zuni rockets, or the aim guide rockets, which I'm not good with, they feel like they have a bowling ball strapped to the end of the rocket, and the rocket drop is just super hard, and it's not hard to aim. Once you get the hang of it, it's super cool, but I think rockets overall should move faster through the air, and with an increase in flight ceiling should allow the helicopter to have that sort of like long distance strafe. Obviously they can't be hiding way in the back at spawn, because obviously their weapons have limitations. They have their engagement distancing, so they do have to come in, step into that danger zone where the A gun is waiting with their belts and their freaking insane cannons and missiles and stuff. So they have to come in, drop in, strafe, get low, get out. And this is gonna go for aircraft and helicopters. There needs to be more added defenses. It's not enough to have just flare which by the way, flares don't last as long. So I think they need to buff flares, make them last a bit longer, kind of like they did in 2042, which they did good. They also need to bring back ECM. I think that would help out in terms of combating the stuff that we get dealt with, and adding more things to help making getting locked on more harder, you know. Not harder, but more negatable. Gives us a chance to go in, get in a kill or two, hop out, and do all that, right? The point isn't to break aircraft, it's to add skill to them and keep them in line with, once again, the stuff that I mentioned for the air, you know, for the anti-air and stingers and stuff, because there's a lot of stuff going on. Another thing too is for helicopters and jets, I think the below radar needs to be increased a lot, because I feel like to get below radar is super hard. And then even if you're below radar, if you're designated or you got a tracker dart, which a tracker dart I think is fine, but if you're designated, below radar doesn't work, and I think that is very annoying. So it needs to be increased for helicopters and jets. And I think if you're designated, if you're below radar, you shouldn't get locked on. If someone manages to hit you with a tracker dart, then you can get locked on below radar, but that's like a skill shot, you know. Another thing that's gonna count towards air and helicopters is I would like to see more strike packages. So let's say helicopters, secondary weapons, you have your anti-air missiles, you have your air-to-ground, your ATGMs, which are lock-on. You can probably have maybe a guide bomb, maybe. I can see how that can happen. You can give the gunner more variety in terms of like armaments to play with. I think that would really help out that. That's pretty much what I gotta say about the helicopters, to be honest. Another thing is they need to rework the base A, because it is preventing a lot of munitions to go in and deal with people who are camping at their spawn with tanks. It's acting sort of like a trophy system, which to an extent it is kind of accurate, but for gameplay purposes, I think the stationary AA gun at your base should just be for aircraft that get too close to try and spawn camp the planes that are in the ground. But they need to change it to where, like, it's not as accurate. Let's say within 100 meters it's engaging you, and I even think that's too much, right? It's engaging you, but it's not hitting you. Sort of like firing warning shots. But like as you get closer, let's say like at 50 meters it hits you a couple times, and let's say if you're within 25 meters it just freaking bursts you down, right? But I think having the AA gun stop bombs and stuff when you're trying to hit targets that are camping at the back, it's not a good feeling. I think they need to do something about it. I think the base AA gun needs to be addressed, because it's preventing things from hitting targets that are just sitting back there not moving up, you know. That's why AA guns just can't buy it. It's why Bradleys are back there, or IFVs, or even some tanks that just sit there at spawn and just shoot across the map. I think the base AA gun needs to just be focused on the anti-air, and that's it. Enough about that. Going in the jets, this is the part that's gonna be really insane. So right now the flight model, for what it is, it's alright. It's not the best thing. Some planes feel sluggish, but I do like how it feels, but it can be improved. And I think the way to improve this is adding energy and momentum into it. I would start off by adding different roles, which there are now, but like if you plan to add like an A10 or a frogfoot later on in the game, in the live service or whatever, definitely add, let's say, your air superiority, your F-22s, your SU-57, your multi-role would be the F-16, the Rafale, your attacker. You can add an A-10 and a frogfoot. And the way I would balance this is I would make the air superiority vehicles turn really tight, make them fast, and the weapon packages they would have would be primarily air-to-air, very minimum in terms of air-to-ground, because it doesn't make sense for the F-22 and the SU-57 to ground pound. Multi-role would have strike packages that are good for air-to-air and air-to-ground. And then attackers would be good for air-to-ground, minimum air-to-air, but only out of self-defense. And let's say the air superiority vehicles are fast. The multi-role vehicles they can be fast, but it depends on what strike package you're taking, and if you're emptied out or if you have full loadout. Stuff like that adds sort of like a drag mechanic, so you won't be stuck in a turn fight. Let's say certain strike packages affect your flight performance a bit, they'll add drag or something, and the way to replenish this instead of having the recharge timer, kind of balance it out, is to go back to your base, pass through rearm, and then go back and attack. I think the only thing that would be good to recharge would be maybe the missiles, and that's pretty much it. But you can add different bombs for, let's say, the attacker on the multi-role. You can add 500-pound bombs, 1,000-pound bombs, 2,000-pound bombs, ATGMs, rocket pods. Give them a variety of things to do, because right now, aircraft as it is, you can't do anything. You're just stuck with a base package, and they're not that good. Maybe the attacker's good, but like the F-22 one isn't that good, and yeah, definitely you can work around with that. Also, I would make every plane feel unique in their own way. So, say the F-22 and the Su-57 are air superiority vehicles, so they have stealth, which means when going up against each other and other aircraft in different roles, it would suggest that they are harder to detect on the map until they are super close, unless they have like their where I say the bomb base open to fire a missile, then you can see them easily. I would say also multi-role vehicles. Let's select the F-16, right? Because the F-16 is known to be a good dogfighter. Let's say when it's emptied out its ordnance, it is more nimble, it is faster maneuverable. It can kind of keep up with the Su-57 or even the F-22 if the pilot knows what they're doing, right? That combined with turn fighting, energy retention, angle of attack and stuff, I think would add more skill and more depth to air combat, which I think is something that is desperately needed in Battlefield 6 right now, because it's just right now it's whoever can get behind you, whoever shoots first is it. I know they're talking about like nerfing the cannon damage, but you're just prolonging the inevitable. I don't think that's going to change. Another thing is I need to get rid of that lead indicator, because that's removing a lot of the skill in air combat, you know. And what else? I think that's pretty much it with the air. I would add energy. I wouldn't make it to where whoever goes slower, whoever stalls out, wins the dogfight. You know, that shouldn't be the case. That's been the case in like Battlefield 5, Battlefield 1, and other Battlefield games. That's not right. So I do like that it takes long for you to recover from a stall if you stall your aircraft. Definitely, like I said, adding energy, speed, momentum, angle of attack would improve your approach to air-to-ground combat, especially like air-to-air, because if you're in a death spiral and an air-to-air thing, you're gonna be bleeding a lot of energy, you're gonna be bleeding a lot of speed, and it'll open you up for a more nimble fighter to come in and ruin you, you know. It's a good way to balance it. I would make each plane feel competitive with one another, but within their balance roles, so like air superiority on top, multi-role attacker. You'd have to be really smart to knock out a stealth fighter with an attacker. You'd have to know what to do. It's very intricate in terms of how to balance that, right? And that's pretty much it for the air. I'm gonna touch up on the live service and stuff right now. I think the live service is providing a lot of content, but monetization content. It's not providing a lot of stuff for content in terms of keeping us engaged in Battlefield, right? I mentioned earlier I would like to see maybe 3 maps and a classic map come in. So let's say you add 3 new maps, a small, medium, large scale map, and then your third map could be like, I don't know, let's say Goma and Railway. Or you can add Operation Locker, you can bring back Metro, you can do a lot of stuff. Reimagine it to Battlefield 6 standards, make it bigger, add wider maps, get that done. I don't think we need more $20 skins. I mean, it's going to happen either way, because this is Dice's cash grab, but I would like to see more content given to us to play throughout the seasons, right? Having 2 or 3 maps and maybe 2 or 3 guns isn't enough. I would like to see 3 or 4 maps, ideally 4, and maybe like 4, 5, or 6 guns to play with throughout the season, right? And I think that would really improve the quality of the game with the amount of content we're getting. And I feel like overall it is what DICE needs to improve the game, get it to where it should be. Because we as Battlefield players, and me as a Battlefield veteran, we know this franchise is capable of doing really great things. Battlefield 6 sold a lot. It's a good game. It won a couple of rewards. It is an amazing game, and it is very deserving of every title that it gets. It's worth the praise, but right now, with the current state of the game, there needs to be a lot of improvements, especially in terms of like armor and air. And I think having more realistic, in-depth dynamics like the stuff I've mentioned would definitely bring that out. It would add skill to being a tank driver. It would add skill to being a helicopter pilot. It would add skill to being a jet pilot. And it would make the game a lot more interesting, right? So, to kind of summarize everything, a lot of why the players have left the game is due to the horrible imbalance of teams. That also with the matchmaking and the lobby disbanding is not helping. There's no sense of community in this game. Armor, while it feels strong, it doesn't feel that good to be in because you're just eating shit everywhere. So I think having that added layer of defense would help out. Plus improving muzzle velocities or shell velocities overall would be really good. And as far as air goes, increasing the below radar would be good. Increasing the flight ceiling would be good. Adding more things like introducing energy into the game would definitely, like speed, momentum, and all that stuff would help out. Add a layer of skill. There's the belt mechanic that you can adopt from War Thunder but make it more in line with Battlefield. I think that would help out. And overall, I think this would help improve those aspects of the game. Whether you agree with me or not, I am interested to know what you feel, what you think. If you agree with me, let me know in the comments. If you disagree, let me know. How would you improve air, ground? What do you think What do you think needs work in Battlefield, and what would you like to see moving forward to help bring players back, to help improve player retention, and to keep Battlefield alive? Because this is a great game, right? I love Battlefield 6. It's been fun, but we all know it could be better, and we all want better for the game. Let me know in the comments below. I want to be reading what y'all put. And if you made it this far into the video, Jesus Christ, you're a real one. Hope you had a good New Year's. And if you're interested in more of content like this, feel free to leave a like, comment, definitely subscribe if you made it this far. Definitely afford your attention. Subscribe. I am going to be making more Battlefield videos. Starting season 2, I am going to go over the weekly challenges and how to best complete them before I end up rerolling them. That's why I haven't been doing it this season. I'm going to be covering a lot of things. I'm going to start making a lot more shorts. And I'm going to pull the trigger on making my loadout series that I've been wanting to do. So, a lot of great content coming in 2026. I do plan to get to 100 subscribers by the end of next year. Right now we're like at 62. I want to get that up. I feel like at the current rate we might hit it before the end of the next year, way before. So I am going to be planning something special for that. And yeah, with that being said, this is AG Gaming. I hope you enjoyed my suggestions into improving certain aspects of the game and my opinion as to why I think people are leaving. Obviously, I know a lot of players can relate to this, so feel free to let me know once again in the comments what you think, and that's gonna be it. Have a good day, have a good New Year. You all rest, chill. 2026 is here. We're gonna have a good time. And yeah, have a good day. Peace.